Early voting in Chicago is now open in all 50 wards through Election Day on November 5th. Remember, any voter can vote at any early voting site no matter where they live in the city. And if you haven't registered yet or you recently moved, same-day registration is available at all early voting sites. Just bring 2 forms of ID, one of which should have your current address. Go on and check voting off your to-do list and vote early. Go to chicagoelections.gov for more information. It might be getting cold outside, but it's about to get a whole lot colder at Paramount Theater in Aurora. That's because the regional premiere of Disney's Frozen, the Broadway musical, is bringing winter magic right to our backyard. Playing October 30th to January 19th, you and your family can watch Anna, Elsa, Olaf, and Sven in this heartwarming fable live on stage. Get tickets at ParamountAurora.com or call 630-896-6666 and use promo code CityCast, all one word, for $5 off. Today on CityCast Chicago. With early voting underway, Chicago is electing its school board for the very first time, or at least partly. Chalk Beat Chicago editor Becky Vivi is here with everything you need to know before Election Day. Plus, it's the start of our fall membership campaign. It's Monday, October 21st. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. What's up, y'all? Today is a big day because we're kicking off our fall member campaign. Now, if you're new here, or even if you've been around for a little bit, you might not know that CityCast Chicago is supported in part by our memberships. So yes, while our podcast and newsletter are completely free and they're going to keep being free, that's only possible because of the support we get from members. That's why all week we're asking you to consider becoming a member to support our daily CityCast Chicago podcast and the amazing Hey Chicago newsletter that we all know and love. If we've ever helped you understand a local issue, made you laugh, or you sung along during one of our conversations, or we introduced you to something dope happening around the city, now's the time to show your support. For the last almost 4 years, I've had the privilege of doing this job. And when I meet people out in the street who thank us for talking about property taxes, or when people in our DMs thanking us for walking guides, or coming to their neighborhood and peeking in on one of the conversations important to their side of town, it means the world to all of us, and we just want to keep doing this every single day. Joining our member community is the best way to support our daily podcast. And here's a little something extra. Anybody who signs up during our fall campaign will get an exclusive CityCast Chicago tote bag. That means you can support local journalism and you get some swag on you at the same time. With your small monthly contribution, we'll get to stick around for years to come. Plus, you'll get access to our podcast ad-free. Just visit membership.citycast.fm to become a member today. That's membership.citycast.fm. One reason our members support us and stop by every day is because we always bring the experts in to break down what's happening in Chicago. And right now, that's our upcoming school board elections. So today, the expert is Chalk Beat Chicago editor Becky Vivi. Becky, welcome back to CityCast Chicago.
Thanks for having me, Jacoby.
I know you have been knee deep in school board elections for months now and will continue to be knee deep. You all have been working with our friends over at Block Club Chicago, the Sun Times, and WBEZ to put together a comprehensive school board election guide. But let's start with the basics for folks. How many districts are there and how many candidates are running total?
So there are 10 districts total. There are 31 candidates on the ballot, and there are a few folks running as write-ins.
Set the table for me. Why is Chicago switching to an elected school board after all this time?
So this comes actually after more than a decade of advocacy from grassroots organizers, parents, activists in communities who felt like a lot of the education policies coming out of the mayor's office in the 2000s and 2010s were not beneficial to their communities. They felt unheard. They felt like they didn't have a voice. And so many people have been fighting to get an elected school board, to elect school board members, which is really something Chicago's never had. In 2021, the governor signed legislation into law that said we would go for a 21-member school board, and we would have 2 years of transition in which it would be half elected, half still appointed by the mayor. So we're entering that hybrid phase, starting with this November's elections.
Mhm. Some of the times that I remember the Chicago School Board being in the news was 10 years ago when we closed over 50 schools in largely black and brown neighborhoods. A catastrophe still being felt across the city. I've heard them in the news recently and discussed it at length on the show in regards to the will they, won't they with the future of CPS CEO Pedro Martinez. But overall, what are the broad responsibilities of the school board? What is their power? What kind of decisions do they make?
So I really boil it down to like a core handful of responsibilities. Chief among them is hiring, evaluating, and firing the leader of the school system. So hiring the CPS CEO and firing that person. The other really core responsibility is balancing the district's budget, approving a budget every single year. Now, district administrators and budget officials put that budget together, but the board gets to, vote to approve it, vote it up or down. The other things that they do, they approve contracts with unions that are that represent employees within the school system. They do take kind of formal votes on specific employees. If an employee is accused of wrongdoing or is found to have done something wrong, they can be placed on a do not hire list. Those votes go through the Board of Ed. So they have a lot of really important responsibilities, but I've also spoken to board members who say people should think about the role of a board member as guiding or steering a ship, not so much doing a lot of the day-to-day work. Leave the day-to-day work to the people who actually work for the school system, and instead the board should be providing kind of high-level 50,000-foot priorities and then strategies and views.
Okay. We're obviously not going to be able to get to all 10 races and all of the candidates, but we want to highlight a couple of notable ones. First, which races are looking the most competitive, either because there are a lot of candidates or maybe there's a lot of money being thrown around?
Yeah, so the one with the most candidates is in District 4, which is Lakeview Lincoln Park. And there are 6 candidates total. There's a lot of money that's been spent in this area. And there's, of course, a CTU-backed candidate and Karen Zakor. There's a woman who works for CPS. She's in the Family and Community Engagement Office. She's a former teacher herself, Ellen Rosenfeld, who's gotten a lot of endorsements from local politicians. And then there's Kim Brown, Andy Davis, Thomas Day, and Carmen Giosa. That rounds out the 6 people that are running in District 4. And I would say there's a lot of money just because of the sheer number of candidates. And also just there's a lot of activism among elected officials in that area to begin with. So that is becoming quite a hot race. And you also have super PACs spending money, in support, or in the case of Karen Zakor, we have the charter school super PAC spending against her, saying, they don't want to see her be put in office. She's, of course, the CTU's endorsed candidate. And the CTU is, hasn't been a historic fan of charter schools.
So in a competitive race like District 4, one was differentiating candidates in like these super crowded races, but also what has been the like strategy? Are these candidates like tearing down one another? I've seen some interesting flyers out here on big name candidates. Like, what does that look like in like District 4?
That sort of thing is starting to happen where they're taking aim at certain candidates. We've heard from folks taking aim at Ellen Rosenfeld. In addition to all of her experience in CPS, she is, her husband is a ward committeeman, so he is politically connected. And some folks are saying like she's too much of an insider. The way that we see people trying to differentiate themselves is we did a whole questionnaire on a bunch of issues, and the Board of Ed. I didn't mention this earlier, but they do get to decide on schools opening and closing. And in District 4 in particular, there is a gentleman, Thomas Day, who has said, like, I'm in favor of school closings. I think we need to consolidate schools. And he's one of few candidates who have come out and taken that kind of a stance on that. Most other candidates have said, no, I'm not in favor of school closings in really any case. So we do see candidates trying to distinguish themselves on some issues, as well as their resumes, and sort of taking aim at other people's resumes and whether they're independent truly or not independent. So we do see a lot of that. And we have seen like the mailers and the texts are starting. I'm sure people living in different districts have gotten a lot of those.
If you love grabbing a drink with a friend, and if democracy's on your mind this election season, and of course it is, you should volunteer with Beers and Ballots. Beers and Ballots empowers you to get off the sidelines and into the game this election season. It's a fun, easy way to facilitate conversations with prospective voters and their swing state friends over free beers. And if you were the owner or manager of a bar or coffee shop or entertainment venue, Beers and Ballots can increase your revenue and increase foot traffic by 10 to 15%. Here's what to do. Go to beers.vote to learn more about how Chicagoans can get involved and to sign up. Again, that website is beers.vote. Vote like your beer depends on it. This ad was paid for by Movement Labs, LLC.
Chicago's favorite holiday tradition is back at Lincoln Park Zoo and celebrating 30 years. Tickets are now on sale for Zoo Lights, presented by ComEd and Invesco QQQ, running November 15th through January 5th. Get ready for fun seasonal activities like photos with Santa, live ice carving, rides, holiday characters, and more, all surrounded by, get this, 3 million dazzling lights. Catch interactive light displays in the Light Lounge and grab a quick hot cocoa and other festive treats as you wander through the illuminated zoo. And be sure to check out other fun holiday events like Adults Night Out Holidays in December. Zoo Lights will start November 15th and run through January 5th. Tickets are $7 to $10 with select free nights. Get your tickets at lpzoo.org/zoolights to learn more and secure your spot before it sells out. This episode is brought to you by Mubi, a global streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema. Stream beautiful hand-picked films anytime, anywhere. Be sure to catch the cult classic The Fall, now streaming exclusively on Mubi in spectacular new 4K restoration. Filmed across 24 countries over a period of 4 years, Tarsem Singh's ostentatious epic sees a bedridden stuntman played by a magnetic Lee Pace spin an escapist fantasy for a hospitalized young girl. The story transports her into the exotic landscapes of her imagination, backdropped by magnificent costumes and stunning locations. Don't miss your chance to experience this film like never before. You can start streaming The Fall and more for 30 days free at Mubi.com/CityCast. You heard me right, 30 days free at Mubi.com/CityCast. What's another race that you are watching closely?
We are also watching pretty closely District 10, which spans really from the South Loop, the bottom edge of the South Loop, all the way down to the Indiana border. It's a very geographically large district. There's 4 folks on the ballot. Karen Norrington Reeves, she's a CPS parent. She was also a candidate for Illinois' 1st congressional district, the seat that now Jonathan Jackson holds, Bobby Rush's old seat. She is running. Robert Jones, a pastor at Mount Carmel Baptist Church. He also was part of the Diet Hunger Strike that Mayor Brandon Johnson was part of several years ago to save Diet High School from closure. Additionally, Adam Parrott-Sheffer, also a CPS parent and former CPS principal and administrator in Chicago, New York, and the area suburbs as well. He is running. He has kids in the system. And then Che Rhymefest Smith, another potentially familiar name for folks. He's a Grammy Award-winning songwriter, rapper, and community activist. The 4 of them are in this race, and there is, again, a lot of money in the race. Some of that is driven by Che's loans to his own campaign. He kind of came out early with several sort of $70,000 loans to his campaign, which really, jacked up the totals that we were seeing seeing in District 10. The CTU has backed Robert Jones. They've spent a lot of money on his campaign, including defending a challenge to his ballot petitions. And, Karen Norrington Reeves has attracted a lot of support from charter school backers, school choice advocates, others in the business community, some elected officials. And then Adam Parrott-Sheffer has also done a lot of just family and friends fundraising. But we just see a lot of money in that race. District 10, again, such a geographically large district, has a large Black student population, and has in a lot of ways, very similar to CPS as a whole.
We're talking about the city of Chicago, and when you break it up in wards or districts, the type of disparity in needs can really be drastic from one side of the city to the difference. So can you talk a little bit about how do the districts differ in terms of number of schools, number of students inside a district, the different needs that from one district to the next?
One of the things that we see, pretty clearly is there's an imbalance of schools in these districts. So I'll point to District 5. This has only one candidate on the ballot. His name is G2 Brown. He's backed also by the CTU. He was an advocate for an elected school board going back more than a decade. His district has 100 plus schools in it. Contrast that with District 4, where there are 6 candidates running. District 4 has 35 schools. So you're representing a very different, set of school communities. And in the case of District 5, who, G2 Brown, presumably getting that seat, will have to represent a wide swath of school communities. That district also has the largest number and proportion of charter schools. These are privately run, but publicly funded schools. And, I think that there is the most facility needs when I'm looking at our map right now. I think District 9 has the most dollars need of capital repairs, but District 5 is right behind District 9. That means their buildings are aging, and that is something that a school board member also, in voting for a budget, they vote for a capital plan also. So you do see disparities across board district that are going to, I think, make the conversations between these board members, once they're seated, really, interesting and potentially lively and complicated.
We're going to get into a little bit of that inherent tension. But broadly speaking, what are the backgrounds of many of the school board candidates? Do a lot of them have political or campaign experience? Because when I look at my district, District 8, I only have 2 candidates running. I believe I'm saying their names right, Angel Gutierrez and Felix Ponce. And Gutierrez has worked in public service consultation, managing budgets. Felix is a music educator and a music education advocate. But in my district, they've never really ran for an office or held a board position. Is that something you see across the candidates?
I would say yes. Most of them don't have a lot of political experience. They might have political adjacent experience, but they themselves haven't held office. We know Che Reinfest ran for alderman. Karen Norrington Reeves ran for Congress. We have somebody in District 9, Michael Lewis, who actually he sat on the school board for a brief time. He was appointed by Mayor Lori Lightfoot in the last 2 months of her time in office. And then, he was replaced, obviously, by Brandon Johnson. And he works in government. He works for the Department of Juvenile Justice, that world. So you do see folks with a lot of government experience, but not necessarily directly having held political office. A couple of people who've run for office in the past, but maybe didn't win those seats. I would say most people actually do also have some connection to CPS, whether that's a former employee of the district or children in the district. We do have a number of parents running, which as a parent myself, kids in CPS, that is heartening. I think that's a good character trait to have as a school board member. It's not a necessity, but it certainly is a plus to sort of understand what parents and families in the system face.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the money that is in this race. Who's doing the biggest spending in these races and why?
Well, over the summer, a lot of the spending that we saw going in and out of candidate campaign funds was the CTU was one of the top spenders until last month. And last month, we saw the floodgates really open when the Illinois Network of Charter Schools and their related super PAC just dumped like more than $500,000 into candidates that they want to support. Now, the super PAC didn't give directly to the candidates, but you can tell by the way that they have to report their spending that they were spending in support of, a handful of candidates. With all of the super PAC spending, I want to say we're around $2 million at this point flowing into these races.
If I look at the sort of back and forth political slandering between the two, both have been villainized. Let's be real. CTU as well as this super PAC. What do they want largely? Like, what is CTU and their candidates? What is largely their platform, and what is the Illinois Network of Charter Schools? One, I want to know why they're dumping so much money into the race, but also what do they and the super PAC and their adjacent candidates really want?
That's a really great question, Jacoby, and I don't have like a clean answer, I don't feel like, but I can talk about what I know they favor in terms of policies. So I know that the charter advocates have long been, backed by business-minded people who want to see, good fiscal stewardship of the school district, balanced budgets, good spending. They also want to see good outcomes, higher test scores. They want to see more kids meeting the bar in reading and math. On the other hand, the CTU and their related allies are very focused on better resourcing schools, ensuring that every school has what it needs in terms of staffing, has a librarian, has nurses, has social workers, has counselors, has enough adults in the building to support the students. They're also not, again, they are not in favor of closing schools. They want to see school be about more than just math and reading scores. And they've really pushed on this community schools agenda. They've talked a lot about making every school a community school. Community schools, they're actually a formal model that relies on nonprofit partners who can help provide wraparound supports for students, especially in communities that have been disinvested and that maybe don't have a community center, don't have health services. They can provide those support and wraparound services because, as you'll hear teachers often say, and any parent knows this, that like if your kid is not healthy and not, getting what they need on like a social emotional level, it's very hard for them to do well in reading and math. And we've seen under, Mayor Brandon Johnson's, rise to the mayor's office, this push that we need to like address a lot of these other factors like poverty and homelessness if we're going to see real improvement in the school system as well. So you have these kind of two different camps with two different, I don't know, again, that's like the SparkNotes version of their different philosophies.
So post-election day, we'll have half of our school board. Then Mayor Brandon Johnson will appoint the 11 members, and all 21 will take office in January. Given how the current all-appointed school board has been in the news for the past few weeks and months as the district and the mayor butt heads over the budget and seemingly so much more, how do you foresee this new school board working together? It seemed like there's already just some guaranteed tension baked into the pie.
Yes, there will be tension fully cooked into this pie. One thing I should note, legally, by law, the mayor must make appointments. I hate to complicate this, folks, because I told you at the top there's only 10 districts. There will be 20 eventually. So every one of the 10 districts gets split in half in 2 years. So when the mayor makes appointments, he's going to have to look at the 10 winners. He's going to have to look at, okay, who won and where do they live? And then he's going to have to appoint people who live on the opposite side of the district.
So in my district, I have 8A and 8B. And if the winner is from 8A, he has to appoint someone from 8B.
Exactly. I know he did just appoint 6 new members. There's a chance he's going to have to replace some of them. And I know for at least one of them lives in the same side of District 5 as G2 Brown. If G2 wins, which we're presuming as the only person on the ballot, she won't be able to stick around legally based on the law, unless she becomes the school board president. I guess he gets one person who he'll pick who can live anywhere. So it will be really interesting to your original question, Jacoby, about how will they work together. Obviously, we presume that the mayor's appointees will be in alignment with him. Though we presumed that when he appointed them all last summer, and then they got in a fight, and everything went crazy in the last month. But we have presumed that the 11 will be in alignment with the mayor. And then I do presume that a number of CTU endorsed candidates, potentially could win. And we'll then have some folks who are, kind of a counterbalance to that viewpoint. I hope the future board just keeps their eyes focused on the children and the families in the school system and ensures that they stay at the center of the decision making, even though I know there'll be a lot of healthy and lively debate about how to best serve those constituents.
I mean, how much of this could actually affect students and families, and how soon?
Let's use the example of the school CEO. I think, whenever there's chaos and fighting at the top, people don't want that to trickle down into the school level, but inevitably it can. And I do think if you do replace the leadership at the top, it's not just the one person, but others in his administration might leave. And that can start to cause ripple effects. If suddenly the person in charge of the Office of Students with Disabilities is no longer there and they're trying to replace that person, things can kind of grind to a slower halt, slower than they maybe already do move in a bureaucracy. And that can affect families and students on the ground. But, a lot of the hot air and the political fighting that's going on right now, the people who work in the schools show up every day and they do a really great job. And I know, again, at my own kids' school, things are still moving along. They're, learning their numbers and their letters and going on field trips. And that's a good thing. So, but I do think the top really can set the tone. And if there's instability and infighting, that can slow things down and really have an impact on the ground.
So far, is this election process working out the way supporters of an elected school board had hoped?
I guess I would have to ask them all, and maybe I'll ask them on November 6th. I do think that there are some things that people worried about or predicted or hoped for that are certainly coming true. I mean, the fact that we have choices and people who we can decide, who I want to represent my voice on the board during this time when there's a lot of conversation, I think is exciting. I do think there were a lot of people concerned about the big money flowing in, and we are seeing that play out. And we did see, too, 47 people filed petitions to run for these seats. 31 made it on the ballot. That's a lot of people who, got kind of knocked off in the down and dirty of what is Chicago politics. And so I think that raises some questions. These are also unpaid seats. And so some people from the get-go are thinking I don't have that time to, that unpaid time and labor that I can commit to a seat like that. And so, I guess we'll see kind of as time goes on. And certainly in 2026, when there are, 20 seats all up for election and no appointed seats, I think we'll see lively and interesting discussion and debate.
For the folks listening who have been thinking to themselves, all right, Kobe, you've been talking about this for months, and now I'm finally ready to get into the booth. I'm going to head to the show notes and go to the Chalkbeat School Board Election Guide. What will they find when they go there?
Sure. There's a tool that we built with the Sun-Times and WBEZ where you can plug in your address. It'll tell you what district you live in, and you can then go see basically a little bio of each candidate. We had 8 yes or no questions and then another 8 open-ended questions. So you can explore just their direct responses. Additionally, on our website, we have a series of district profile stories that we've written with Block Club. So you can find your district, that story will tell you not only who's running, but it'll tell you a little bit about the district, how many schools are in that district, what's sort of the racial makeup of the student population, who's running, a little bit more about them, their background, why they wanted to run. And I encourage folks to explore both and really help those tools help you make your decision on who you believe aligns most closely with your views of which direction the school system should go in.
Hey, wherever and whenever you are listening to this, please join in thanking our guest today, Bureau Chief for Chalk Beat Chicago, Becky Vevea. It's always a good time, my friend.
Thank you so much, Jacoby. It's great to be here.
Before we get out of here, some good news. The Bulls kick off their season Wednesday on the road in New Orleans before stopping off in Milwaukee right before their home opener on Saturday against the Thunder. No, that doesn't sound like an 0-3 start to the season. That sounds like good news. Join me in my good news. One more reminder, our fall campaign is underway. Become a CityCast Chicago member, and not only will you get all the good feelings and great perks, but if you join during the campaign this week, you'll also receive an exclusive CityCast Chicago tote bag. Just head over to membership.citycast.fm right now to join. And if you're already a member, we see you, we appreciate you, and we couldn't do it without you. One more favor, be back in bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.